are live once again with another episode of Shorts in Focus, where we show short films love. Pleasure once again to come to you guys live from Listen Vision Studios. Man, we are hyped. We are hyped about our show today. Before we jump into that, I want to go ahead and introduce my co-host,
Matt Cipollone.
All right, and our guest for today. Would you go ahead and just introduce yourself?
My name is Fouzia Najar.
Fouzia Najar has a very, very powerful film that we're going to be screening today. But before we get into this film, I'm telling you, man, this film is crazy. It is crazy. We're going to have such a great show just picking this apart. But even before we get into that, Fouzia, just tell us a little bit about how you even got into filmmaking.
Sure. I studied history, which is like storytelling, and I like documentaries. And I made this film, which is kind of an experimental doc. So I just basically have interned for film companies, worked for TV, taken a lot of production workshops, and then finally got like an MFA. So I have to stick with it now.
Is your MFA is in film?
It's in Integrated Media Arts.
Interesting. Where'd you get that from?
Hunter College in New York.
Integrated media. You're about to knock over the set over. Integrated Media Arts.
Yes.
So that's not just film then. You dealt with a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so it's basically nonfiction storytelling over whatever medium you want.
Wow.
I mostly do video. It's very video heavy, but it could also be, web, performance art, really anything.
Integrated. That's crazy.
So you focus solely on nonfiction?
In a way. Or fiction that is very directly based in real life for now.
Very interesting.
Nice. So the name of this film, and I want to ask a question about it later, so I don't want to go. I don't want to start the actual discussion on it, but just tell us the name of the film and just a little bit about the name.
Sure. It's called Semiotics of Islam. The subtitle is A Primer for Kafar. It is based on another film, so it takes its title from Semiotics of the Kitchen by Martha Rossler from 1975. So this was a second wave feminist film for her, and I've kind of updated it for certainly feminism, but also other social issues that we have. Kafar means non-Muslims, so this is kind of like I feel like there's a lot of like misinformation out there in the media or in the public about Islam, and so this is a almost very silent guidebook, I'd say, on it.
Was that film an inspiration of yours for a while? Like, did you always know that you were going to do something about that, or was that more of a recent inspiration?
It was not like a long-term thing. Basically I was in school and my thesis fell through. Like my more traditional.
Scary. We're both in film school, so that's
Yeah,
that's a scary thought.
It was all dead. And I spoke with this filmmaker who I was like lucky enough to know. Her name is Jill Godmellow, because we had worked on an activist project together. And she remade a film, and she called it remakes of Harun Farocki's, I think, who maybe just died, but maybe not. He's like German and Muslim. I can't remember what his country of origin is from. But anyway, so Jill is an experimental filmmaker, also a nonfiction filmmaker, and she remade a film, which I had studied before I met her. And she turned me on to Martha Rossler, who is a contemporary of hers, who I believe is still living in Brooklyn. And part of it was necessity and part of it was inspiration, but I needed to get on with it. Get my degree.
So this turned into your thesis project.
It did. Yeah.
All right. How was it received by the professors and everybody else who had to grade it?
Well, it was on a pass-fail basis. Like, would I get out of this program or not? I mean, I have to say, I think there's a lot of stuff that maybe people don't understand necessarily. The cut that we'll see is a little different because I basically had to edit it not just for non-Muslim people, say, like, which was not my first intention, but also for white people, because that's what my program was. So I changed it after that.
Okay.
But I think it was well received. I just, it's, I don't know if people always got it. It's difficult for people to like hear words in other languages, to see foreign concepts. I feel it's not. I don't think anyone would watch it without having any questions. And I feel like sometimes people feel uncomfortable asking those questions.
That's why I'm so excited to talk about it, because as the first time I saw it, I was like, man, I know a lot of people watched this and didn't get it, right? And and whenever you present me with something that it's so powerful that I'm like, I know it went over a lot of people's heads. I always love bringing things like that apart, guys. It's time. Semiotics of Islam, a primer for kuffar. Here it is.
And if he's talking about this age of extremism and he's a Muslim, maybe he could focus on getting the burqa off those women so they can see but everything except for that little slit through their hoods.
Sharia law is now changing everything. A YMCA in Minneapolis, St. Paul is starting a swim group for Muslim girls, but special considerations have to be made to keep with their religious beliefs.
Abaya. Burqa. Chador. Dupatta. A-sharp. Hijab.
Was he trying to buy weapons of mass destruction? Yeah. And jihad? What are we profiling these folks and looking at them hard and say, listen, are you really here to go to Lubbock, Texas to learn something, or are you here for jihad? How about this? Can we stop pretending that there are certain people in certain countries are less of a risk or more, that everyone's equal?
Intifada. Jihad. Lota. Miswak. नमाज की टोपी.
Islamic Jihad, Islamic Jihad. I mean, duh. They were screaming at the top of their lungs, Allahu Akbar, and repeatedly swore in the name of Allah that they would continue to fight against us.
Quran. Rihal. Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Tasbih. Wudu. Zamzam.
Yo, just take it. I can't. Just go.
Well, there's so many layers to this that we want to talk about.
Okay.
I think Kayeen and I are both annoyed we only have 45 minutes to break this down with you. Lucky for us, we get to talk to you afterwards. But I think first things first, just to kind of shape the context for the rest of this conversation. How did you pick the story structure of breaking down letters of the alphabet as the skeleton for such a powerful piece?
Well, for story structure, I have to go back to Semiotics of the Kitchen, which is a film, you can Google it, it's on YouTube, where there's no talking, and it's one wide shot of a woman who is picking up different items in a kitchen and, kind of miming how you would use them. And you're kind of like, what is happening here? But also, it gets more animated toward the end, and basically it gets more violent. It's like storm and stress of like being an educated white woman in the 70s, but like being stuck in the kitchen. Or, the filmmaker has written or given interviews where she's talking about, the majority of women who attack their husbands fatally, do it in the kitchen with those kinds of instruments.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
Or
at least at that time.
I can absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
Monet, I'm sorry. That's my wife. She's, Don't kill me in the kitchen, please.
So that, I actually, there's no text on screen like there is in my film in Semiotics of the Kitchen. So I got to the end and I realized what she was doing, what the filmmaker and what the actor was doing, and I like immediately watched it over again. So I feel like that's it was a good sign for me. So I did follow the alphabetical order, and I actually got really into it, maybe even to the detriment of the film, because I wouldn't stray from it. But I added, those letters that you write in school, and you have to like write uppercase and lowercase letters, just to kind of show that it's going at least in alphabetical order. Because sometimes I feel like when words are in different languages, and there's multiple different languages in this film, none of which I speak also, I should just say that. It's hard for sometimes American people or, English speakers, people who don't know other languages, any of the combination of those things, to recognize a word. So I just wanted to put it on screen and also, really just emphasize that it's like a kid's school book.
And see, that's what was so impressive to me about it. It was like, you idiots. Seriously, that's I mean, when you really sit down and think about it, it's like, you idiots, because you won't listen to anything that we try to explain. We're going to break this down to the simplest possible terms, right? The very first thing you learn in school is the alphabet. So let's approach this from the alphabet and lay everything out in its simplest possible terms, because you won't listen any other. That was brilliant to me. It was brilliant. It was like how it was like insulting but still just genius.
Yeah, I heard, hey, stupid.
Right, yeah, no, seriously. Because like you said, I mean, you had the lines that the kindergartners have to trace over, and that's what you put the alphabet up on. So it's like, I mean, that's the first time I looked at it, I got that. It was like, you guys won't listen when we try to actually tell you, right, that this doesn't represent us. So let's break it down to the lowest possible terms, the simplest possible terms, and see if you can get it. Right, the whole jihad piece, which I mean, we're going to focus on a little bit later, because it's in another clip coming up. But the struggle, the shaking off, the jar opening. It's like, why can't you get this? That was that was just amazing to me.
I think that part of this film is me actually being earnest and wanting non-Muslim people to understand what it's about, or at least what I am about. Like, I can't speak for all people. And the other half is just me being really like angry and bitter and addressing people like they're idiots. And
it's necessary at this point, because people don't get it. And what's funny? I feel like there's starting to become a parallel with that in like the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Where it's like, you aren't getting it. Like people are pissed and you aren't getting it. How can you not understand why people are pissed off? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it really, like, I mean, I like drawing parallels like that. That parallel to me was just really, really strong.
The parallel is there. Let's just, we can go on and on. I mean, that parallel is an entire show.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I feel bad saying that everyone is an idiot, but the thing is that it's not about individual people or, people who might not know other kinds of people, but it really is, to me, lies in the responsibility of the news.
Well, that leads into what I wanted to talk about next, actually, is the media is a part of this. And those are real clips from real newscasts from what some people's only source of information is.
Idiots. I'm sorry, just
But it's also, this episode is ironically timed with the shaping of platforms that could eventually be the guiding force for the next several years. So, it's clear that you have an opinion of the media. What do you think they need to do better? Because this wasn't a complimentary portrait, so let's just skip that part about do you think they're doing a good job and get to what do you want to see the media do differently, given the fact that there is a lot going on and that people are susceptible to a whole range of emotions right now for everything that they've been bombarded with. How do you draw that parallel of a lot going on but still knowing that the media needs to get better? What is your wish for how that information is presented to us?
I mean, I think the first thing would be that, like, one, the media doesn't have to be, a perpetrator of propaganda to serve, corporate interests or, our like war hungriness. And I think that, I do obviously think the media is garbage, but I also think that they're criminally responsible for like a lot of deaths,
Wow.
here, there, not just Muslim deaths, everywhere. So I like accuse them of having blood on their hands. And I put Fox News clips in this film because they're the most dramatic and the most where people are stuttering and don't know how to like use English words, let alone, words that are in Arabic. But the thing is like, this could be on,
Sorry.
this could be on, those sorts of clips
Yeah,
are on
I know what you mean.
CNN.
Yeah.
I've seen Rachel Maddow, be an asshole on, can I swear on this show?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just did.
Let him fly.
Be an asshole on her show, and she's like, this liberal, whatever. So I think that, liberal people are probably most of the people who are seeing my film, coming across it somewhere. And I just wouldn't want them to think that they're off the hook because they're like not listening to Fox News. My sister works for the New York Times. They're not perfect. So I think that like we need to be. I think that what we have to do as like consumers, just we need to be critical of everything that we read or consume. I think that a lot of those, like large media conglomerates, like, we have to recognize where their interests are lying. I think that another big thing, and this comes up with like this past fucking week, which is crazy.
Nice. Couple of weeks, man.
Yeah.
It's
It's been
going crazy.
I feel like it's very difficult for the news to mainstream news, headlines, nightly news, internet news to say anything nuanced.
Yeah.
And like life is complicated. Stuff that has been going on is complicated, and like that's not the message that people are getting.
You know what's scary? What's scary is that most people rely on one news source to get their news, right? And I remember listening to Dick Gregory once, and he, just completely just lambasting the news, and at the end saying, you need to be reading 10 to 20 different newspapers a day to get even an inkling of what could possibly be the actual story, right? And when I just attempted to look at, one story from the perspective of 3 different news outlets, a lot of times it was a completely different story. And so what you say about the media it's absolutely true. It's like when you have the power to dictate how people think about a particular situation, like if you say something and people react violently to it, that is an absolute valid point that you should be held criminally responsible for putting out false information. That is absolutely true. And I don't understand how nobody has said that. Is, can we say that real quick? If you haven't heard that before, you heard it first on Shorts and Focus. The media needs to be held criminally responsible when they put out false information and people react violently to it. Right? See, I knew I was going to love this episode. We need to just start a whole separate show. Before we go into the clip, I want to talk a little bit about semiotics, right? Because the title of it is Semiotics of Islam. I know you took the title from another like similar film that was made, but tell me a little bit about why you kept that particular word in the title. Tell me about semiotics in the context of this film.
Well, I kind of hate the word semiotics. It means the study of signs, and it's like basically comes up a lot in academia. And it's just like, the bane of my existence, like in college. But I wanted to kind of use it in that like annoying faux academic way. And it worked out. Some of the things that are some of the items or concepts in the film are not necessarily something that you would hold up or something that you can see, but a lot of them are things that mean a lot to people who don't, or maybe misunderstanding what they do mean. So it's kind of like, what represents Islam and what does that mean to other people? But it's also like nothing one thing can represent Islam, or like these 5 things. I think it's important to note that like the majority of these things of the items are either in Arabic or Urdu. So this is very Arab and South Asian. It's like a huge hegemony that we have in Islam. So it's problematic as well.
Guys, in case you missed it, we're getting ready to go back and revisit some of these clips. They are worth replaying. Our first clip. You want to talk a little bit about the clip before we play it?
I think I know what is happening here. So this is the beginning of the second round. Another, basically a Fox News commentator has just like used Jihad in a wrong way and is just kind of sputtering, and he's like, oh, are they here to study or are they here for Jihad? That's what he says. And for me personally, I've noticed in the news for a long time, way before I started thinking about this project, that American media doesn't translate words. It doesn't translate words from Arabic or other words like, say, intifada, and people will just take jihad to mean holy war. So I just wanted to show what the actual definition of these words were, take them out of the context that they are obviously placed in.
All right, let's run the clip.
Was he trying to buy weapons of mass destruction? Yeah. In Jihad? What are we profiling these folks and looking at them hard and say, listen, are you really here to go to Lubbock, Texas to learn something, or are you here for Jihad?
How about this? Can we stop pretending that there are certain people in certain countries are less of a risk, or more that everyone's equal?
Intifada. Jihad.
Well, before I get to the question I really wanted, can you talk a little bit about that very last clip we just saw, opening the jar, and just talk to us about what that scene means to you?
I think jihad is a word that is maybe most used, that hasn't been translated in say newspapers or even like academic textbooks or articles. And it has come to mean something that I feel like is very intense. And I think that people who are in the media do not translate it in order to like foreignize or otherize us. I'm not Arab, but like, there's a lot of the problem with the news is that it dehumanizes like all not just Muslims, but other groups of people.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time. So people don't feel bad like when we die, basically. It makes it very easy to justify other people's, law enforcement agencies or our military's actions, or just a random person who like pushes someone who's like Sikh, in front of a train because they think they're Muslim or something like that. So jihad, I feel like my friend, this scientist and activist, Hala, she was, I mean, a lot of people you can see at the end of this film collaborated with me on like words, because I got really adamant about sticking to the alphabet. And so the jihad thing is, it means struggle. It certainly doesn't mean like usually a physical struggle to open a jar or something like that. But it's kind of like the struggle within you to like be a good person and like live in this world, and like, life is tough. But Hala, this woman, when I asked her, she brought up the jar thing because it's kind of like a joke about like, like what women can't do. Like you might normally ask a guy to help you or something like that. So it just harkens back to that like 40-year-old film where, we're just updating like our feminism for like, people who look like us as well.
Another layer. Now, speaking of struggle, though, so how much of what we're seeing here is a product of what you've felt personally in your life and are trying to speak out against as far as personal experience, or between either you or just family and friends? I mean, how much have you been witness to and experienced personally from what you're trying to address with your message in this film?
Well, I think I, have witnessed, like, personally, some Islamophobia, I was in second grade when the first first Gulf War happened, and I think I was the only Muslim in my class, and people would say, like, I was a terrorist, or Saddam Hussein was my uncle, or something like that.
In second grade?
I think it was second grade.
That's crazy.
Did they even know what they were saying back
Right. Clearly you're regurgitating what you hear from your parents.
I don't mean to minimize it at all. I'm just...
No, seriously.
It's incredible how people say things and don't understand, but the people who receive it understand. I mean, it's just it's an unfortunate paradox.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when, people are mean to me being older, they also don't understand. Yeah. They're just observing from other places. But
Idiots.
Idiots.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
One thing, that I've noticed, it's not like an Arabic word, but it's this, so I'm from Buffalo. There was this TV station called Bridges, and it was run by a man and his wife, and I believe they were both Pakistani, American. And one day someone showed up to work, and the husband had killed his wife, and she was, like, practically decapitated on the floor in their place of work. And because this was on the front, this is insane. It's an insane story. And I don't even like to talk about instances where, like, Muslims are, like, wiling out, because it's embarrassing. Embarrassing is, like, the least of it, but it's just, like, I don't usually discuss problems within my community with outsiders, because there's a lot of judgment there. So it's awful. Like, this woman, her, kids lost their mother. The guy's definitely in jail. So this is on the front page news of the Buffalo, or front page of the Buffalo News, and it's like honor killing in TV station or something like that. If you scroll down, I wasn't scrolling because it was a real live newspaper.
Right.
I was looking at, but I looked at, like, I flipped it and I looked at the bottom, and then there was another, like, small headline that said, "Man kills wife in domestic dispute," and it was a different story. So the common thread here, that then those people, the woman who died and her husband, they were both American born. Certainly not brown. They were white or black. I cannot remember which one. But, like, the common thread there, and the problem is domestic violence.
Right.
And, like, we're labeling it in different ways depending on who the people involved are. And, like, that's not justice. So anyway, honor killing is, like, another word that gets thrown around. It just got thrown around because of some brother, like, in Pakistan, like, not strangled, like, suffocated his sister. Everything's like going crazy. In America and abroad. So that was one thing that was on my mind. So it's not just words that are stuck in Arabic. It's like, oh, we understand, like, say, like, people in the news were like, oh, we totally know what jihad or intifada, Sharia, honor killing. We understand these concepts, and it's like, because I don't know anything.
They
about
drop them like they're masters at it. Like, they drop them like they've studied them for 10, 15 years, right? And you know what I'm saying? You have to remind yourself that they're literally being told what to say through an earpiece. They have no idea what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? They're being fed their lines. And it's I want to come back to the jihad piece. Would you say the word jihad has been misappropriated? And I asked that having come from an experience literally just this past week, right? I do, like, poetry seminars, right? And so I was doing a poetry seminar, and I had the kids come up, and these two white girls wrote this poem called All Lives Matter, right? Now, the poem itself was very socially conscious and talking about, how it's ridiculous that the police are killing black people and yada yada. I mean, it was. I listened to the poem very, very closely, and it was a positive. It was a positive poem. But the organization who I do the poetry seminars for freaked out. They sent me like 5 emails when I left. Oh my God, Kayeen, we're so sorry. And they, pulled the group to the side after I left and had this long conversation. And it just became so sad to me that a term that on the surface shouldn't be argued at all. All lives matter. Yes, of course, all lives matter. But because of what it's been sort of misappropriated to mean, now, it's polarizing. Would you say jihad has been sort of treated the same way?
I think that so much of our culture is either secular or not Muslim or not culturally Muslim. I think it's just like this. It's like the neo-colonialist way of talking about other folks. So like if before, like a European country was like invading somewhere and modernizing everything, secularizing everything, like ripping hijabs off ladies' heads, stuff like that. I feel like it's this new. It's just the current way how to otherize like me or anyone, and kind of just paint them in a certain way. I think that. I think it's worked really well. That the way the media does things, and I don't think it's not deliberate. I think that the word jihad, it never really meant that much to me, because it doesn't apply to my life. I think that if you are having a moment, an internal moment, you might think about it because life is hard and decisions are hard to make, and being a good person is hard. That's the only time it's really mattered to me. There's something that people say where I didn't even know this. So say something, you're in the mosque or you're with a bunch of Muslims and something someone says something awesome, you say this thing, takbir, and everyone else, it's like a call and response. Everyone else says God is great. And it happens 3 times. So it's kind of like saying word, it's great. But then I feel like I read it in a book somewhere that it was what people yelled before running into battle, Muslim people. It's like a call. It's a call to arms. And I don't even know if that's true. And I didn't even bother looking it up, which reflects badly on me. But I was I feel like that sort of thing, and even in my mind, might conjure up someone on a horse with a sword and a turban and some sheikh in the desert. But the thing is at that time, this is pre-Crusades, but all empires were, war hungry. Yeah. So I just feel people are very selective in the representation that they want to have. Say there's a lot of terrible things that happen in this country that someone might be thinking we're not civilized about. But what we talk about is people in Pakistan being right. insane and murderers and stuff.
Now, bringing it back to the film and your choices for what we saw, there's a very distinct aesthetic style. It's very, there's shadows. There's lots of, your use of light is really interesting to both of us. How did you, it's such a distinct, deliberate style that you shot this film in. Can you just talk about your vision for how you wanted that to come across and what you would want the audience to take from such a unique style, especially the mood?
Well, it's supposed to be kind of like a theater, in a performance piece, but also a classroom. Originally I didn't know exactly how to use the news clips. They're all very specific to what comes immediately after them. And I feel even that day before, I was just oh, we will pretend that she's watching TV, but those images are reflected back on her, because that's what's happening, to Muslim people, visibly in the street, or, if they just feel that way, if they feel persecuted. And then the rest of it, lighting, it was definitely supposed to be very simple. I think I did shoot some dolly shots, but ended up never using any of them. But I have to credit, the team for that as well. Not to be a huge girl about it, but I was more into the writing and directing of it.
No, that's great. We want to hear more about your team as well too. But we have our final clip coming up. Do you want to introduce that for us?
Yeah, there's certain parts of this film and the way it worked alphabetically also fit into theme and it helped match my clips from Fox News. So this is there's a before one might pray, you kind of ritually clean yourself, and so you might know that people pray 5 times a day if they feel like it. So it is a lot. And so it's just about like kind of a cleanliness sort of thing. And I used it in this, you can see if you watch it like, multiple times or like with, my comments in mind is that this is kind of a part where she's been angry and she's kind of like calming down. It's like going down to like the kind of a more cleansing and refreshing part of the movie. So I think it's like I don't need to comment on anyone, their religiosity and what that does for them, but that's just like the actress, and my personal interpretation of it.
All right, let's roll it. Let me.
Wudu.
All right, so I want to know how you came to settle on this particular actress, right? I mean, her style, her aesthetic, she's got what I assume are burns on her arms. Like, did you audition people and decide on her, or was this did she come and volunteer? How did you come to that particular actress?
So the actress is a great person named Adiba Rana, who is a writer, librarian in New York. She's a roommate of my friend, so we're all friends. But I hadn't known her until like maybe 6 weeks before we started shooting, because we were at our mutual friend's birthday party. But we had both heard about each other. So she's South Asian. She originally, I talked to her about this script because she's a writer, and that's not what I do usually. And I wanted her input on things and, what she thought. I was getting a lot of pushback from my school, and so I wasn't sure if I was crazy or if, they were racist or whatever. And then I started talking to her, and then I Googled her stuff, and she was involved in Circle Theater. Okay. And I was like, so I called her back because she's shy, which is most actors are not. And I called her back and I was like, what, are you kidding me? Like, why are you not being forthcoming with me about this stuff? You are going to be in the movie. So
you demanded it.
And that just worked?
Yes.
Like, that's all it took?
Exactly.
Right.
I had to cajole her in ways. I mean, she was doing her own wardrobe and makeup and hair. But it worked out. And I feel like, so both in American culture and also in South Asian culture, which she and I both are, she's not like a body who is often represented. It's not just, her arm. It's also like, her hair. She has like, really long hair, which a lot of Indian women have. But it's also curly. Like, I think even in American culture, like women with curly hair often are like, at least in the workplace or, to feel fancy, like straighten their hair. And something that she and I have noticed when we go home to like where our parents are from that, is not very popular, to say the least. So she, it's just a subtle way of putting bodies on screen that aren't represented. In this case, it's certainly feminist because, because of her size. And then it just happened that, when you do whether you like roll up your sleeves, she was actually in a really bad car accident and had a compound fracture.
Okay.
And so that's why her arm is like differently shaped. And so I just wanted it to be something. I mean, it worked out, and I wasn't going to like not cast her because of it, or I wasn't going to cast her because of the way her arm looked. But it was just something where someone's body looks different than yours, and like it's not the focus of her character.
Right.
So it's like not a big deal.
I mean, I've got so many other questions I want to ask. You want me to toss you?
Yeah, I mean,
Toss you
I'm
one. Go
trying
ahead. I
to
know we
figure
gotta-
out which questions to pick from all the ones I have left. But yeah, I'm curious because you did take a stance in this movie and address certain issues at a larger societal level. When you talk about the media, we already covered that before, and the fact that you were fine giving really blunt opinions in the conversation. That makes me curious as to what you see the potential of film to be for addressing the things that make you angry. What do you think? I mean, are you an optimist when it comes to filmmaking as a medium, or just art as a way to address change? Or just talk to me about what you think the potential is for taking a stance against the things that make you angry. Or maybe not angry, but just passionate about. Let me just put it out that way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not an optimist. I kind of waver between like, wanting to tell people to fuck off and that like I don't owe them anything, any explanations about myself or anyone else. I'm sure there's tons of Muslims also, on the other hand, who would be like very weirded out by anyone speaking for them, let alone me. I think that, I mean, like, my entire career has been about, at least the beginning, has been about showing subjects on screen that I had a passion for, and usually there's something about social issues, about representation, about history or education that can be used, to show people, like, a story that isn't in our collective narrative. And I think when I was younger, I was really, really believed in the power of, documentary film to bring about social change. And maybe I don't believe that anymore. But you have to say, like, I mean, I have to say that I might not care about what people think, or I feel like I don't owe them anything, but I just made this whole movie for them. But I should say that this movie, the target audience for me, which, a lot of people don't understand or don't want to admit because the subtitle is a primer for kafar. Like, my audience, it was supposed to be Muslims, and specifically Muslim women, because this film is hilarious. And like, I don't know if you've ever watched it with a bunch of Muslims, maybe not. And I've only done it like once. It was at a writers collective that in New York, and it just was like,
I would love to do that.
Absolutely.
I would love to
Oh
do
my
that.
God.
I
Come
feel like
on.
every other word people would be going, yeah, no shit.
It's just like, I mean, Diva does a great job of being a hilarious person. Her bitterness, she's a much more optimistic and outgoing and wanting to help people, wanting to educate people. She literally teaches kids, in high school. And I am not as patient, and I don't like it. But I mean, this is the way I chose to. And I think that it's also important for, like, people who are younger, maybe, they don't, we talk about this now because, there might be more representation in mainstream media, fiction as well, of, people who look like us or whatever. But the thing is that, like, they're like, oh, there's a Lota on screen. Like, that's ridiculous, but also hilarious because I have one in my house. So a Lota is it's basically like for ablution, like when you are gonna pray, like you're basically, it's like a butt washer. You're just washing everything. Huh. So she does it with her pants on, and she was very embarrassed that I made her do this on camera. But I did, like, it's just this like hilarious thing. So everyone, especially Lota is the Urdu word for it. I don't know even what it is in other languages, but it's so funny.
All right, so I've got two questions, and I'm very, very curious to hear the answers to both. The first is, as a thesis film, because I know at some point you had to screen it, how is it received? And the second is, what was your end goal? What did you want people to get from it versus what did people actually get from it when they actually watched the film?
Well, I think when it was a screening, I feel like it was me, my mother, and my sister, and Adiba, the actor, the only Muslims in the audience.
Wow.
You know, it's a thesis show for like 5 or 6 of us students. I feel like I should talk about maybe like the pressures of. So we have you know, a committee of like 3 people. I had 2 of my favorite professors at school, and then one guy who I didn't really know, but he was the experimental, you know, guy. And so like I had him, you know, someone suggested it. One of my favorite teachers was like, I was like, I'm trying to staff up this crew with like all Muslims, and she was like, well, you just need to make sure that it's good. The experimental.
That's helpful.
So, and I mean, that's the assumption that like, you know, a Muslim crew, like, or like, you know, a brown crew is not professional or, you know, not available or whatever, but we did it. And it's not all Muslim, but like,
What was your response to that question?
I took it. I always take it. I mean, you know, like she's in a position of power over me. So I just like disregard these comments and just move on and do whatever I want. I mean, recently I was like going to start like a diary or a blog of all the times that someone said something shitty to me and like that I don't say something or I do say something, but I never say things. Yeah. And like, I just feel like it just never happens. So then the second guy, the experimental guy, there was a point in filming where it's the 3rd clip and it's this really terrible thing that happened in England where like these guys like ran down a soldier and then like chopped him up with a machete. And it was like on camera. It was crazy. I don't think we saw that, but I think in England, you know, before they censored it or whatever, people saw the very graphic stuff. And so we see, you know, this man is talking. We can kind of see him. Adiba's shirt is all yellow, so it's like a big canvas, you know. And at one point I was like, we have to move the projector because his hands in blood are like showing up on her shirt or you know, like that soldier's blood is on Adiba's hands. And I just got very uncomfortable with the way it looked. And so then my professor, the experimental one, was like, when he watched this, he was like, well, that was a really terrible thing that happened. That hatcheting up of that man in the street. And I was like, I know that. You know, I knew what he was saying, but I wasn't going to engage in this because what he was saying is like, I'm not putting that piece of news in the film to be like, this guy got what he deserved. I was doing it because Michelle Malkin is screaming words in Arabic and going like this with her hands, and then she says, I mean, duh. I mean, that's not journalism. She's a fucking idiot.
I took that more as a reflection of the newscast than the event itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and that was my intention, and I don't mean to make light of, you know, soldiers' deaths and stuff, or like, you know, cops' deaths, but at the same time, you know, well, I'm not even going to get into
No,
that.
but it was it was related to the event that it was, but it was I took it as you were focusing more on her reaction than the clip that everyone was already familiar with.
Yeah, and it goes back to the media translation of it. I mean, there's so much power that is put in your hands when you can, you know, you're given a factual incident, but depending on how you report it to people, you know, it's either an isolated incident that does not implicate 1 billion people, or it's an incident that is not isolated and that, you know, that completely incriminates 1 billion people. And it all comes down to how you report it on camera, you know, to the millions of people watching. It's ridiculous.
And I anticipated that question, so I'm not sure why I was shocked when he said it, because I changed it so that like the blood wasn't all over her. And then, you know, another thing with translation is that, so my 3rd teacher wanted it to be a primer for infidels. Kafar means non-Muslims.
What the hell?
So kafar means non-Muslims, and one might say that it's a little bit of an insult, you know, to non-Muslims, or you could also say it's an insult to non-Abrahamic religions, like whatever. It's kind of funny for me, but like it's not a word I use all the time. I felt like when she was saying infidels, like when I say kafar, the joke's on you guys meaning non-Muslims, and when she says infidels, the joke's on me. And this is my fucking movie.
Right.
But anyway, so I was like, nope. And she made me put, so in the subtitle, she made me put, instead of kafar, I put kafar, but then she made me translate it on screen. So I took that out. Then when she's introducing it at my screening, she calls it a primer for infidels in front of like my mother, like in front of my family. It's fucking embarrassing, you know? So I feel like these are the issues, the struggles. I was talking about having to change the film for different people or just having to like, I mean, people like this film. I'm like, I hate to, you know, I don't mean to brag.
It's a
I like
great
to brag.
film.
It's a great fucking film.
It's a great film.
And I like,
That's why you're here.
And I just feel
Right.
like, you know, I feel like I've said this before in the press. People are uncomfortable. White people are uncomfortable when films don't directly address them. When media, books, doesn't put them in you know the place of the perceiver. And so like when people see words that like aren't meant for them, that they don't understand, they get really uncomfortable.
Right. It wasn't meant for you.
Well,
in
you
the-
know
in
what?
the
Like
first
I've
place.
always read books and consumed music and you know watched TV where like I'm not represented at all. So I'm just more comfortable with that. So that's literally what white supremacy is.
Now, I just want you to be able. We're both curious as to what you have in store next, and we're running out of time. So I just wanted to make sure that we heard from you. We want to know what you're going to be up to after this. We love the project. We like your approach a lot, and we just want to hear where do you see yourself going.
So
Kind of quick though, because we got.
yeah, I have a script that I will tell you the actual punchline of it. It's more of a fiction film, but like very much based in reality. I'll tell you that off camera because it's not like copywritten or finished or anything like that. I work at a crime show right now. I am quitting it. I'm moving to back to New York on Thursday. I'm going to work for another production company. Honestly, like I have to pay bills and I have to work for like shitty media conglomerates. I hope this doesn't come out. That, you know, my work is not always like the way it is, the way I would want it to be because independent filmmaking is very hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
right now I'm trying to eat.
Yeah, I hear that. Guys, with that, we've got to close out. Man, this could have been a whole nother hour, but we've run out of time. Thank you so much for tuning in to Shorts in Focus. We've had a wonderful show, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week, Mondays at 8 o'clock p.m. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Once again, we are starting a revolution here when we are showing short films love. We love you guys. Thank you. See you next week.
Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Zeke Dowty.
And I'm Kayeen Thomas
And so we're the producers.
of Shorts in Focus.
He's also the host.
I am the host, so you're going to see my face a lot. Shorts in Focus is a show that will be aired on listenvisionlive.com. It's listenvisionlive.com. We will be featuring short film projects.
So we're going to screen it, and then we're going to have a conversation with the filmmakers themselves. The actors, the actresses, producers, directors.
There's no telling who's going to be on the show, but they will always be able to have a discussion about what it is that you just saw.
So whether you have a narrative, documentary, hell, music video, give us a shout at Zeke at shortsinfocus.tv
Or Kayeen at shortsinfocus.tv. And remember, your project has to be short.
every Monday night at 8 p.m. on listenvisionlive.com.
All right, so what you want to do is on Monday nights, 8 o'clock p.m., you want to go to www.listenvisionlive.com. You can do it on your cell phone, or you can do it on your laptop, although we know that you'll be doing it from your cell phone. Once again, you want to go to www.listenvisionlive.com, Mondays at 8 o'clock p.m. Go to the site, hit play. We will be streaming live. So Mondays, 8 o'clock p.m., listenvisionlive.com. Tune in, check us out. We're sure you'll love it.